everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Sarah, for getting us started. We have a lot to cover today, so I'll get right to it. But let's just think just for a second about this year and how that has affected the way that we operate in work, in our personal lives, in every facet of what's going on around us. But disruptions challenge us, as we well know, but they also give us an opportunity to take a pause and maybe think about what it is that we can do better, or maybe make little adjustments as we go to make our lives more productive, more profitable, more pleasurable. We're going to talk about some things today that will help us do that. If I can get my slides to move. There we go. So anytime we're forced to make a change, we know that it's a good time to ask questions. So maybe we should start asking our questions and have some courageous conversations with ourselves about what it is that we control that can make things better. 87% of companies over the past 10 years have undertaken some sort of major transformation. Even prior to the pandemic, 75% of those transformations failed. And imagine what transformations we're going to see as we move through and get through this pandemic that we're still wrapped in right now. But the bottom line is that most of these transformations fail because of invisible human factors that stand in the way. Research suggests that the real enemy of high performance is not stress, which we feel in transformation, which we feel in disruptions, which we feel at times like now, but the real factor that affects performance or profit or pleasure is the absence of disciplined and intermittent recovery from work demands. We know this: if we stress muscles, right, they will get bigger. Right? That's why people lift weights and do all these things. So we know that muscles will not get bigger unless we stress them. But if we stress them too much, we're headed for an injury. It's the same with our lives. If we put too much stress on ourselves, it's really, really, really difficult to function at our highest level. Yet if we don't have any stress, we don't grow. So how do we balance those things? In today's increasing and demanding complex business environment, it's increasingly critical that individuals and organizations learn how to manage more skillfully. And this starts by managing our energy, not necessarily our time, but our energy better. So here's the question. Are you headed for an energy crisis? You were given an energy audit, hopefully prior to this, and hopefully you have filled that out. I'm going to ask you to report your findings to us here in the next couple minutes. But the question here is, what is the number one energy dimension you want to improve? But contrary to the memes we read, success and profitability and all those things, it's not really a journey, right? They're a state. They're a state over which we have control and responsibility. So success is basically a combination of small positive actions. If we want to be truly successful, we have to understand that things don't happen to us, they happen because of us. And if we can take responsibility for our lives in that way, for our productivity, for our well-being, we begin to understand the importance of managing our personal energy. To operate at our best, we need to focus on these four very different sources of energy. You can have, the body or the physical source, which is the foundation of all others, to build our endurance and our fitness. Our emotional source, which enables our excitement and our connection, and how we know that how we feel influences how we act and perform. We have our mental or our mind, our mental source that creates our focus and attention, because we know that how we think affects our emotions. It affects our actions, our performance, our results. And then, of course, our spiritual source. It provides our centeredness and our presence. This is our why, where our purpose connects to what we do and connecting what really matters to us. For some of us, we do a great job in one area, but tend to neglect others. Like I do a relatively good job of the physical part. I don't take enough breaks. I don't do a lot of other things we're going to talk about today, and you probably don't too. But finding that balance, what's right for us individually, will make all the difference. And a lot of things we're going to talk about today are not rocket science. There are a lot of things here that you're going to understand as part of what we should be doing. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, and we know that as well. But here's our current state, right? We're juggling all kinds of different things. And energy expert Tony Schwartz, the author of The Way We're Working Isn't Working, says we've got it all wrong when we're thinking about getting things done. Most of us respond to rising demands by putting in longer hours, which inevitably takes a toll on us physically, mentally, emotionally, and it leads to declining levels of engagement, increasing levels of distraction, high turnover rates, soaring medical costs for employees and employers. We work more but less effectively and less productively. So it's how we manage our energy during these times, how we invest our time, and how where we're spending with our loved ones. Is it the time? It's the times we choose to be more focused and more present that make the difference. So the core problem with working longer hours, as we know, is that time is a finite source. We can't get more of it. My dad tells me all the time that I think I can fit all this stuff into a day, and there's still only going to be 24 hours. And I'm going to be sleeping, hopefully, for 7 to 8 of those. So I need to readjust my appropriation at times. But we can only do so much without hitting a wall. So the challenge is really not to get better at managing our time, which is what we try to do. I'm going to do this, 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 and we have a plan. And so many times that fails. What we really need to do is learn how to manage our renewable source, our energy. This can be systematically increased, right? By increasing our productivity and our engagement, we can do that with plans, rituals, and some of the ideas we're going to talk about here. Energy is defined as the capacity to work, right? In each of our 4 well springs, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional, they can be systematically expanded in the rituals that we choose. So time is finite, but energy is infinite. The key is to becoming aware of where we need some help. And hopefully just by filling out that little survey, you can sort of say, wow, I don't do a good job of getting 8 hours of sleep. I just don't, right? I don't sleep. And, or whatever it might be for you. But when I'm talking to teams and students or athletes about mental performance, we talk constantly about self-awareness, which I call our superpower, and figuring out what it is we do, and why we're doing it, and what we need to change. That's the only way that we can get better. Corporate America knows that this makes a difference. There have been studies done in major banks that show that participants who went through a program that focused on these 4 well springs or springs to improve our energy, the people that went through this program had improvements of 13% in productivity over the control group. In other factors that were important to the banking industry, they improved by 20%. This lasted in the first 3 months of the study, but then continued for a full year after the study was even over, after the program was even over, because hopefully these people implemented some of these things into their daily lives. They also found a personal impact. 68% found positive impact on their relationships with clients and customers, and 71% felt that they performed better. So focusing on tools that help us improve in these 4 areas can make a huge difference, not only for us individually, but for our companies as well. So we're going to ask you to do your own self-study, and maybe you'll decide to join us. We're going to have a program called Personal Energy Management that's going to start here in a couple of weeks. There will be daily exercises that we will do throughout those 3 weeks to try to build some of these things into habits and rituals that become who we are and what we do and help us improve. But it all starts here, restoring our physical energy. The first thing that we have to do, and we all know this, but it's still hard to do, is we've got to move our bodies. We don't have to be Olympic athletes to enjoy the benefits of exercise. We don't have to run a marathon. We need to get up and walk up and down the steps. We can do 5 push-ups every time we go to the refrigerator. And since we're working at home, I don't know about you, but I go to the refrigerator a whole lot. And every time I open the door, the same stuff's there and none of it interests me, right? Except the bad stuff normally. We're going to talk about that as well. But we've got to find ways to move. We know it makes us better. It increases our longevity. It makes our joints feel better. It changes the chemicals in our brain. You hear about runner's high all the time, and it's real. That's why people run, because it's not fun to run. It's fun afterwards because you feel good, right? But just as important as that is getting sleep. We talked about stressing the body. We've got to let it rest at some point, and we need 6 to 8, really 7 to 8 hours. And there are lots of things that can affect our sleep. And number 1 is our cell phone. I have turned mine to grayscale. I turn it off at night, put the sleep on so I don't get interrupted by text messages and things like that. And what a difference that makes. We can all make choices to figure out how to sleep better and a little bit longer. That makes such a difference in our recovery and in our longevity as well. If you look at studies on sleep, they say that not sleeping affects performance as much as drunk driving can, right? If you're sleepy, you drive like someone who's impaired. That's the difference in having good sleep and not enough sleep. Moving on, we all know that eating better is good for us. It's really difficult to do, but there have been studies that with people who keep fresh fruit out in the open or on their counter, they're more likely to be normal weight compared with their peers. But when snacks and cereals and sodas and things were readily accessible, these people were heavier than their neighbors by an average of almost 20 pounds. Women who had a bowl of fruit visible weighed about 13 pounds less than their neighbors who didn't. That's what eating well can do. We need to eat more often. Our strength coach, when I was at Cleveland State and at Akron, when I was coaching, he used to say, you know, you've got to eat more often. You can't eat a big breakfast and a big dinner. And I don't think he meant eating the animal crackers that were in the big thing underneath my desk. I don't think that's what he was talking about. But you need to eat small meals throughout the day. Keep your energy levels up. It makes a huge difference. We make so many decisions right before noon and right before 5 o'clock in meetings, and we're depleted at that time. But if you can continue to eat smaller meals, it keeps your energy up through the day. And lastly, in this section, water, drinking water. Up to 60% of the human body is water. And 73% of our heart and brain are water. Heck, 71% of the earth is water. And yet, 75% of us walk around chronically dehydrated. A 2% drop in hydration can cause a 10% drop in athletic performance. So think about that. I know that we're not athletes necessarily, but if you think about that's a major drop in performance for a 2% drop in dehydration. That's crazy. It also, again, this creates symptoms similar to impaired drivers. This stuff is serious. Just think what a kinder place the world would be if we drank enough water. It's pretty easy to do, but you've got to plan it. You've got to make it a ritual. And we'll talk more about that in the program as we go through. Next, we're talking about restoring mental energy. This is really important, as you know. How we think affects everything. But one thing that's really important is taking scheduled breaks. That's one thing that I don't do well, is take scheduled breaks. And it's really easy to do. We've got a timer in our hand all the time. You can follow the Pomodoro technique where you set a timer for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, do it again. After 3 sets of those, you take a little longer break, maybe get a meal, do something like that, one of your small meals, or you can go into a 90 to 120 minute break if you think 25 minutes is too short for the projects that you need to be working on. But what happens is that our body it starts to flow, and we start to yawn and all those kinds of things after about an hour and a half. And we don't pay attention to it. We try to push through and our productivity just drops. Another thing we need to do to restore our mental energy is eliminate distractions. 34% of employees like their job less when they're in a distracted workplace. Even the briefest interruption can double a worker's error rate. That's just crazy, right? Eliminating distractions can decrease the time needed to complete a task by more than 50%. You can save so much time by turning off your phone, by going to a different room, by telling people, by not picking up the phone, turning off your ringer. Right? Just because the phone ring doesn't mean it's an emergency, although we treat it like that. Then secondly, we can eliminate distractions with our email. I'm working on this now. If you send me an email now, you're going to get a response back that says, I checked my email at 10:45 and 3 o'clock. If you need me, text me or call me. And I haven't got a text or call yet. I've been doing it for about a week leading up to this, thinking I better start practicing what I preach. But the bottom line is, if you think about how much time we spend going to our inbox, we're disrupting our thought. Just because something comes in doesn't mean it needs our attention right away. We went a long time without email and everything was okay. We know that filing a piece of paper instead of filing a whole bunch of paper at once, is a waste of time. Answering an email instead of answering a whole bunch of emails at once is a waste of time as well. Another way to mobilize mental energy is intentionally focus on activities that have the most long-term leverage. I call these, and a friend of mine who does mental training call these MITs, the most important thing. Basketball coach Pat Summitt said you have to do the hard stuff first. Otherwise, all the other stuff just sits there or it stays on your mind, and you're by the time you get to it, you're tired because you probably didn't take breaks, you probably didn't eat enough, you're probably not drinking enough water, all these different things. But if we can do the most important thing first, then answer our email, by 10 o'clock, we've already accomplished a whole ton of stuff. And we feel like we've already had a productive day. We need to write that down, write down the most important things, schedule it in, because we know what gets written down is more likely to get done. So think about your most important thing. Next, restoring our emotional energy. This is really, really important. Our thoughts affect our emotions, affect our actions, affect our performance, which affect our results, right? We can ask ourselves some great questions to reframe our stories. Like this: regardless of the outcome of this issue, how can I grow and learn from it? Right? We turn a negative into a positive if there was something that went wrong. Or how will I most likely view this situation in 6 months? I used to ask my athletes all the time, is this going to matter in 2 weeks? Because if it's not, we're losing a lot of sleep over it. Is it really going to matter? Or what can I learn? The other thing we can do is sort of think about what was negative or what we thought that was negative and dispute it. Say, that's not true, this is true. I'm not good enough to get that position. Well, I was good enough to get this position, right? We can dispute ourselves, right? We're constantly limiting ourselves. We have constant negative tendencies, but if we can stop and think about those thoughts for just a second and say, that's not true, this is true, it changes our emotional energy. We have to be able to manage our stress. Here's my eight-year-old son sitting in the park meditating. He said, this would be a great place to meditate. I'm like, sure. I have no idea what he's doing during that time, but he's quiet and he's learning something. But what does this mean for you? We're going to talk about tools for this: meditation. It may be managing exercise for you. Maybe this managing stress may be exercise for you. This is different for all of us, but meditation, breathing. One thing that we can do is just literally sit, breathe in for 6 seconds, breathe out for 5 or 6 seconds. This turns off the fight or flight response. It feeds the part of our brain that allows us to think and takes blood away from the part that makes us emotional. And we know that when we act with just emotion, a lot of the times we are heading down the wrong road. So sitting, taking a breath, literally pausing to take a breath, can make a huge difference in our outlook, in how our brain functions, and in our heart rate, and affects what happens next, which can make a huge difference. Lastly, in this section, appreciating others, right? A powerful ritual that fuels positive emotion is expressing appreciation to others. This seems to be as great for the giver as it is to the receiver. So we're spreading positive emotion, not only within ourselves, but out into the world. Take time to write a handwritten note. We were at our friend's house the other day. My son wrote a thank you note for a Lego set that she sent him for Christmas, and it was on a refrigerator. We had Thankful Thursdays when I was at Akron, and I walked around campus and there were handwritten notes from our players on desks all over campus, because when people get a handwritten note, it means something. Send an email. They say lots of great executives start their day by thanking someone with an email. We have to schedule it in. This is another thing that is simple to do. And there are so many people to be grateful for, and we know that. And when we start to look at the things that we're grateful for, the people we're grateful for, it sort of snowballs. We start to look for the bright spots. And how awesome is that for positive emotion? Lastly, restoring our spiritual energy. We have to tap into the human spirit where our everyday work and activities are consistent with what we value most. If we started this at the beginning, if we went with this one first and thought about this first, it doesn't really fit. We've got to sort of look and understand that taking care of ourselves really helps us in that spiritual way, right? We have to live our values and work toward our strengths. How can we do that? Recall at least 2 work experiences in the past several months in which you found yourself in that sweet spot or in flow. Deconstruct it and figure out what made you feel so good and do more of it. When I do stuff like this, I love it. It fires me up. On weeks where I just sit and do administrative work, I'm not nearly as happy or productive. So find out what fires you up and schedule that in. Figure out how you can do more of that work. Try something new. We get so used to stuff, right? I just got a new treadmill last night. I can't wait to go run on it today. Running doesn't excite me necessarily, but figuring out the new features of it is exciting. So I'm looking forward to that today. Something new. That's important for us to get out of just every day, or even if you do something constantly, look for something new in what you're doing and make it exciting. It's a choice. It's a choice. Here's one that seems so simple, but prioritizing our priorities. There's a divide between what people say is important and what they actually do. If spending time is important, is what matters to you, schedule it. Turn off your phone when you get home. I have completely changed my life in the past 2 years to focus more on my family. I had no idea what I was missing when I was out traveling all around the country for the past 26 years. I had no idea how much of my son's growth I missed. And I feel bad about that in a way, but gosh, I've learned so much. I love that job, don't get me wrong, but I have changed my life to fit my priorities at this point, and it feels good. Lastly, start a gratitude journal. Take a couple seconds every night. I write down 3 things every night in a gratitude journal. And the cool thing is you can go back and think about all the things you were grateful for last week. And when you read it, you relive it. This changes the chemicals in your brain. It makes you look for the good stuff. There's so much good stuff. And if we write it down, we get to relive it. And that makes us happier and more spiritually grounded people. There's so much good to look for no matter what. So, our energy is our responsibility. Are you willing to take time for yourself to get into that renewable source that's there, that energy? It's not about our time. It's not about our time. Our time, we waste it. But if we have more energy and more focused energy and we do some of these other things, we are going to be more productive with the time that we have. We'd love to have you come and let us help you find your best energized self. We're going to start a program in a couple weeks here, and Sarah will send you information on this with all the details and how you could register. On Mondays, we'll be doing meditations with Mackenzie Osborne, who was one of my former players, who is a scholar in mindfulness. On Tuesdays, you and I will be doing Triumphant Tuesdays. We're going to tie physical and mental performance and talk about how that can benefit us. These are literally 10 to 15 minute sessions on a daily basis. Wednesday, we have Dr. Lynn Olatowski, who is a biology professor at Ursuline College, also a nutritionist. She'll be talking about how nutrition can help us improve our lives. Thursdays, we have Paula Fitzgerald, who is our campus minister, one of the most unbelievably calm people I've ever met in my life, and just so, I don't know, just she's amazing. She's doing Thankful Thursdays. Can't think of a better person to help us get grounded in our gratitude. And then on Fridays, it's Fun Friday with Tiffany Wallace, and she is a student affairs programming director, so she understands fun. This great panel of women can help you build rituals. We have 3 weeks, 21 days, they say it takes to build a new habit. But the bottom line is it's scheduled, forced time to spend on yourself. So we hope that you will spend some time with us. And Sarah, I don't know if we have some questions. I see the chat going off, but I can't see it. But I'll let you go ahead and take it from there. And if anybody has any questions or there's anything that you want to share, go ahead and go for it.
Sure. So we only have about 5 minutes left, Julie. That was action-packed. So why don't we share the results of the poll question? And I'd love for you to comment on this based on your experience as a coach.
Oh, great. So most people, the energy dimension that they want to improve is their physical, which that doesn't surprise me because I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do. Fitting in, what we do is we say, I'm going to go work out. And then you go work out and you can't move the next day and you're like, oh, I'm not going to go work out again, right? So the bottom line is we've got to figure out how to do it in small incremental steps. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about on Tuesdays. But it literally, in Tiny Habits, BJ Fogg talks about getting up in the morning and laying out your yoga mat. And then if you keep doing that, you realize I'm laying out this yoga mat, I might as well get on the darn thing. And you spend a little bit of time doing that. Or he started doing, flossing one tooth at a time. And then all of a sudden you're like, I got the floss in my fingers, I'm doing one, I might as well do all, I don't know how many teeth we have, I know one of mine got knocked out by a ball, so I'm one less. But the bottom line is we're doing that. So it's figuring out how you can work small things in that don't disrupt everything and scare you off, right? You're not going to go out and run 3 miles at once. Start walking, start jog, walk, jog, walk. Every marathon plan starts with some sort of walking and jogging plan. That's where it begins.
That's great. So Julie, I would like to get my body, my energy dimension of body into shape as well. And so I've started by buying a new pair of sneakers. Haven't started, my new routines yet, but I have one step. And so every day I look at them and think, oh, I better put those on. So not there yet, but soon.
I sleep in my workout clothes. And knowing, and I lay my socks out unballed. My shoes are in my workout room. Everything I need, so I have to get out of bed, brush my teeth, walk down the steps, and work out. Because if anything happens in the meantime, I might not make it down there. And if I don't do it in the morning, it's not going to get done. I didn't do it this morning. I've got to schedule it in this afternoon still.
That's great. All right. Well, we don't have any questions from our group here. So I just want to take a minute to thank everyone for attending. I'm sure you have other plans for the rest of, your lunch hour, maybe grabbing lunch or hanging out with your kids if you're homeschooling. We'll send you a copy of this presentation along with the assessment in case you didn't have a chance to take it or you couldn't find it handy next to you today. And then we'll also send you some more information once registration opens for Energize and Shine in March. All right. And then with that, Julie, any other closing thoughts?
Oh, we appreciate your time, and just think about maybe one small change you can make starting today, and you're one step closer to having that infinite energy change your life.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.